hey, you need to get real with who you are, not what everybody else wants you to be. I had to make a decision. Are you going to get all in to the commitment that you made to your wife? Are you going to get real with who you are and start dealing with who you really want to be in life? You're going to be bold enough to live through those decisions. I wouldn't be here had somebody seen something in me that I didn't see in myself.
Hey everyone, welcome back. I am so excited for my next guest. For more than 4 decades, my guest today has built leaders, grown organizations, and helped thousands discover what it means to stand out in authenticity. He's a Maxwell Leadership faculty member, also a Maxwell Leadership coach, a best-selling author, a devoted husband of 46 years, and he's truly someone that believes that real influence comes from being all in, being real, and being bold. Tim Novak, welcome to the program, my friend. How are you today?
Oh my gosh, I'm doing so well, Nathan. It's a pleasure to be here, and we won't let my wife watch this recording because anytime I tell people how long we've been married, she's like, "Oh my gosh, why did you do that? Don't ever do that again."
Which is funny to me because your wife looks younger than you, and as I've seen you, like when you start going through some of your history of how many kids you have and you have grandbabies, and I'm like, how do you have grandbabies? You're not old enough to even have kids, I don't think. You look so
Yeah.
young. So
We started we started young. We started young when we didn't know what we were doing, and it was cool as we kind of progressed with our kids. We're like, hold it, by the time they're 20, we're going to be like, we're still young, which was really, really cool. So for us, it was like we just kind of happened into it that way. It wasn't something strategically we did.
Well, I like that you say that you were young and didn't know what you were doing versus you were old and thought you knew what you were doing.
Exactly.
Because I
Exactly.
think isn't that kind of how it works nowadays? Because
It,
I feel like I know a lot of parents that are older or they're starting to become parents and they're older and they're saying, "I know what I'm doing," and then they get into it. They're like, "I have no idea what I'm doing."
I have no idea whatsoever. Absolutely.
So, Tim, where did you grow up? You grew up in Oklahoma, right?
Yeah, I grew up in Oklahoma, born in Oklahoma City. My dad worked for General Motors, Pontiac, and we traveled a lot. So we traveled. I lived in Oklahoma City, Amarillo, all over northern Texas. Then moved to Houston. So kind of all around the Midwest.
That's cool. So you did travel just a little bit around the Midwest. What was childhood like for you?
My parents and grandparents, they were hard workers. My grandparents were farmers, and one of the things that was impressed on me at a very early age is that you were going to have a job doing something. And we all started. I had two brothers and a sister, and I think we were all working by the time we were 10 years old at something, doing some kind of job, working to earn some kind of pay to help pay for the things that we wanted. So they were really focused on work ethic and hard work as young kids.
What was the job that Tim found himself in most of the time around the farm?
Oh my gosh, for me, I tried to get away from the work around the farm as much as possible, especially when it came to milking cows or something. So I think my grandparents got me a 410 shotgun, and it was like anytime I could get out and go in the woods and be alone and do some hunting, that was my primary objective back then. But
What kind of student were you growing up?
so to tell you the truth, I really, growing up, I didn't have a lot of self-esteem.
Hmm.
In fact, I didn't make real good grades when I was a young kid. Didn't have a lot of friends. I was one of these kids that was a little more introverted, sensitive. I was a kid that athletically I was pretty talented, but relationally I didn't have a lot of self-esteem. So School was a challenge for me in elementary and junior high. It got better as I got to high school, but growing up as a kid, um, I really didn't have a lot of direction, a lot of self-esteem.
Mm. Who were some of your earlier mentors when you were growing up? Like the people that really poured into your life that you recall? Who were those people? And maybe what were some of the lessons that they instilled in you that still to this day you look back and you go, man, I remember learning that by seeing this?
Yeah, I don't know about you, but I had grandparents that were interested in my life, so I spent a lot of time with my grandparents. And on my dad's side, my granddad worked for a private country club, and
Mm.
that's where I got interested in golf as a young kid. And I would go to work with him during the summer. I'd go stay with him during the summer for a few weeks, and I got to watch him work with people. He was the head of all the maintenance crew. So from an early age, uh, he showed interest in me, and I got to watch him and observe him with people that he was working with every day. And, I don't know if you know much about um, private golf courses. A lot of discipline has to happen at golf courses to keep them in shape, especially in a part of the world where it's hot and dry. So, watching him really, um, it bonded us as a relationship, made me wanna be with him, and then, wanted me to or helped me really wanna emulate a lot of the things that I observed in him.
Mm. What did you find yourself doing in your off time when you were a kid? Or maybe actually even more, I'm curious, what was the dream? What did you dream about when you were a kid, Tim?
So, you know, I I was one of these kids because I had been exposed to working at something as a kid. I probably had 20 different jobs by the time I graduated high school because every summer I was, had to get a job doing something. And I really didn't have a lot of dream like, I'm going to be this, I'm going to do this. It was
Mm,
more of, I'm going to work at something. And what I work at, I'm gonna be better than anyone else that works at that job. I had a morning paper route when I was in junior high. Had to get up. Back then, you had to fold the papers, rubber band the papers, 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning, and then you had to walk them or ride on a bike to your home to drop those papers in the middle of the night. Amarillo, it's super cold during the winter. So, what I would do is rather than throw the paper, and I know for some of you getting the paper today is like, "Oh my gosh, do they still do that?"
and for those of you that don't know what a paper is, it's what they used to print the news on in ink. And then it would be delivered to the door by usually a small child.
So, I would lean that paper up against the door so that all they had to do was crack it in the winter because it would snow, it would be super cold outside, and my way of serving them was I would lean that paper up to where all they had to do was crack the door, reach down, and grab it. So that type of service to me as a young kid, I didn't have so much as a dream as what I wanted to do. It was like, I don't know what I'm going to do next, but what I do next, I'm going to be better than anybody has ever been in that job before. So my tips were bigger, my loyalty was bigger. And when I came to collect my payment, because back then you had to go door to door to collect your money, I got paid.
Mm.
So every job I had, I'm just telling you, Nathan, every job I had, we sold donuts door to door when I was a young kid. That was my first job with my brother, and we'd go pick them up at the donut shop warm. My mom would keep them warm in the oven, and we would run as fast as we can from house to house selling them while they were still warm. And people were like, absolutely, we'll take warm donuts at our door on a Saturday morning at 8:30. So, again, I didn't have a lot of dreams, but what I did know is that I was gonna figure out a way to be better than the best at whatever I did. So, in any job I had, whether it was washing cars working at a service station. That's kind of what my dream was I'm gonna find a way to master this to stand out. So for me, that was kinda how I grew up, and I didn't have a lot of friends. Like I said, I didn't have a lot of self-esteem, and I say that because even though my dad set a lot of expectations for us when it came to work ethic, he was an alcoholic.
Mm.
And when you live at home with an alcoholic, you don't know what you're gonna get when they come home at night. And it might be a good night, and it might not be a good night, and you can tell just from the way the door is open, the door is shut. So I kinda grew up in a family that kept their mouth shut,
Mm.
but we worked hard.
I'm curious, who were the people early on in your life that instilled entrepreneurship in you? Because there's two kinds of people that I meet. There's people who they love their job, they want to work their job, and then they want to go home and do something with their family. And then there are the other people that say, I want to do something crazy. To them, it's not crazy, but I want to do this and I want to work 80 hours a week and I want to go to sleep late and wake up early to do this thing that I love. And I want to make this my career, the entrepreneur. Who was it that instilled entrepreneurship in you?
Well, again, I think the role models I had from just watching my parents work hard, and their emphasis was take whatever you're doing to the final step.
Mm.
Because if you do take it to the final step, there can be bigger wins for you. So I wasn't chasing someone. What I was doing was just putting in practice what they saw and how they were guiding me. And as a result of that, dude, I came out of school going, I'm gonna be able to run circles around other people, not because I'm more talented than them, but just because I'm willing to do more, be more than most people want to be. And, we see a lot of that today, right?
Yeah.
We see a lot of the opposite of that today, is that they want all those benefits, but when it comes to putting in the effort to to get it,
A little less.
a little less, right?
Yeah. Which is funny because we were talking about that before we even started. The idea of, it does take more to have success and to have something look good or to do something well. It does take more. It doesn't take a lot more, but it does
Yeah.
take more. I'm curious, what happened after high school? So you graduate high school. Where does Tim go from there?
So I started a relationship with my now wife when we were in high school, and again, I was a hard worker, and I think a lot of the things that attracted to her was I had a checkbook. In fact in fact, she said as we got older and we were still dating, she's like, "Hey, you got Girl Scout cookies, you got Thin Mints in the freezer, and you've got a checkbook. I'm latching on to you," right? So
That
so
is a
that was
keeper.
that that was what so even in that relationship that I had with her for several months and a couple of years, I still didn't have a lot of vision of what I wanted to do. I was gonna be good at what I was working at and
Mm.
provide a regular income, but it really wasn't until about 8 months in to planning a wedding that I learned about leadership, and I learned about entrepreneurship, and I learned about everything. It was 8 months in to planning our marriage. She had the dress, she had the invitations, and I got cold feet.
Mm.
I'd been hanging around with guys after work, having a couple of drinks, listening to them talk to me about, "Why do you wanna do something stupid and screw up your life and get married? You'll never have any more fun." And the more I hung around them, I started thinking, you guys are right, right? I didn't have a lot of self-esteem. I
Yeah.
didn't have a lot of mentors in my life, so I was very influential, and the more I hung around them, the more I started thinking, "You guys are right, man." So one night I met with Julie and gave her the "It's not you, it's me" speech, and I canceled the wedding, and it was devastating. I mean, If you think she took that well, you'd be you'd be so wrong. It was devastating for her and her family, and, you know, it only took I don't know, a week or 2 for me to figure out how bad I screwed up. So, naturally, I did what any guy would do. I called her up and begged for forgiveness and suggested we elope the next week.
That's funny. And I recall her bringing you home at one point, and her there was a moment between you and her dad that was pretty impactful. What was that her father said to you that kind of shook you at your core, realizing that something needed to change?
Yeah, it was really interesting, first of all, on that call, she said yes to eloping the next week after we had been planning a wedding for a couple of years and I called it off. So we got our marriage license and we stopped by her house to pack her bags and break the news to her parents. Now, let me just tell you, my relationship with her parents at that point, especially her dad, I wasn't at the top of his I like this guy list.
It's probably slightly strained.
He was a little bit strained. In fact, I think they were probably in shock when we showed up and broke the news and said, "We're here to pack our bags and we're going we're gonna get married in the next couple of days, and oh, by the way, you guys are invited to come if you want." Now, think about that. He set me down around the kitchen table, and he asked me several questions that night. And I'll never forget 3 questions he asked me. He said, "Will you put God first in your life? Will you honor Julie with your life? And when you have children, will you raise them in a godly home?" And, when a guy wants a girl, what's he gonna say? You know, I
Yeah.
mustered all the conviction I could to say yes, yes, and yes, right? I answered yes to those questions. We got married in my mom's house. I can't believe that. We got married in my mom's house, spent the night at a hotel in downtown Dallas, drove home the next day, and she went back to high school. And she was still in high school, and I went to work. It was absurd. And she called her dad about 3 weeks later and said, crying, saying, Daddy, I want an annulment. Tim's not the guy I thought I married. I was still hanging out with those guys after work. I hadn't changed a thing. And she saw it and said, I'm out of here. I want an annulment. I'm done. And he said, "You're not coming home. I'll call Tim." That's where I learned about leadership. He said, "You remember when we were sitting around a kitchen table and I asked you those 3 questions?" He said, "You're at a crossroads in your life right now. I'll never forget it. You're at a crossroads right now. One path leads to success and sustainment." He said, "The other path leads to default and failure." He said, "I'm challenging you to get all in. Put God first in your life. Honor Julie with your life. And when you have children, raise them in a godly home." And then he said 6 words I'll never forget. He said, "I know you can do it."
Hmm.
Had I not been on that call, that moment, his challenge to me to get all in to my decisions and not what other people wanted me to be, that changed my life. For him to say, "Hey, you need to get real with who you are, not what everybody else wants you to be."
Mm.
In that moment in my life, I had to make a decision. Are you going to get all in to the commitment that you made to your wife? Are you going to get real with who you are and start dealing with who you really want to be in life? And then are you going to be bold enough to live through those decisions, whatever happens? So in that moment, that really defined who I was going to become. And I'll tell you, even today, my father-in-law, had he not been in my life, I wouldn't be on this call with you today. I wouldn't be doing this podcast.
Mm.
I wouldn't be here. Had somebody seen something in me that I didn't see in myself. So that is, you want to talk about who inspired me. Now you put all that work ethic with somebody that got challenged to get all in. Now everything I'm going to do in life from that point forward looks different, whether it's my faith, whether it's my family, whether it's the work that I'm doing, whether it's the relationships that I have. So that has been more that has influenced me than any talent or skill that I could have acquired.
When did that belief change from "I know you can do it," hearing your father-in-law say that, to you hearing it from yourself and saying, "I know I can do this"? When did, because there's this There's a point, I think, in life where we don't have the belief and someone believes in us, and
Yeah.
then we're challenged to go out to meet the challenge that's in front of us. And at a certain point, it's like a switch. It goes from someone else is believing in me so I can do this to I actually believe in myself to be able to go and do this now.
Yeah.
The belief has changed. Like I like to tell people, borrow my belief until you have your own. When did your belief become your own?
Well, and I love that question. Great question. I think the belief became my own over time, but it started with an action.
Mm,
Now, for me, it was you need to reverse course. You need to reverse course right now, starting today. So for me, it was okay, what does that look like? What action is that? Well, the first thing is I had to make a decision that I wasn't going to put myself in the environment with those guys. Now, that didn't mean that I was gonna treat them bad and I couldn't be friends with them, but I was not going to do some things. I was going to take an action, and through that action, I started seeing the benefits. So for me, "Hey, what was it that built that belief?" It was, "Okay, I acknowledge that. I'm definitely gonna put some things in place that are gonna be different than I was doing before." So as I stepped away from those guys and I stepped into, okay, well, if I'm gonna take that challenge on, and he said, "Put God first in your life." First of all, I wasn't a believer at the time. The first thing I had to do was sit down and work on the communication with Julie and say, "Okay, what is this gonna look like going forward? We're gonna get
mm.
involved in church. I'm gonna take that step. I don't know what it looks like, but I'm gonna take that step." And as I did, I started to see the benefits of, oh my gosh, our relationships started getting better. Things started happening that were like, "Oh my gosh, I had no idea this would happen." So for me, it was more of acknowledging it, embracing it, but then taking action. And through those actions is what helped me believe that I could do it.
Mm.
It was kind of like when I made the decision to step out of one role I had into a leadership position. And again, I didn't have a lot of self-esteem. I didn't have the ability to stand in front of a group and talk to them because, growing up, I'd rather been shot than give a book report and be in, be in front of a class. But pushing through and taking action on practicing things like that, the action is what helped build the belief for me.
Mm. I love
Because
that.
I don't believe someone can tell you now. There's people of faith that like, "Hey, yeah, I'm gonna speak over you," and all of a sudden, that's the way you are. For me, it was, "Okay, first of all, I can't believe that you did what you did, and you know what? You are right. I need to reverse course, and I'm gonna put some actions in place." That's what helped me.
You're a learner. And a lot of that comes from situational pieces of your past of, having a father who battled alcoholism. Um, it's true that there's a learning moment of learning really energy in the room. A mentor we both have had has said that when you walk into a room and you've been around those types of people, you very quickly see who people are in a room, and you're able to read a room, which is why I think people that go through that become incredible salespeople. And you're no different than that, which is fascinating to me. You started a business early on in life, um, Matco, I believe,
Yeah,
and you not only started, but you truly did finish. You were caring for 1,700 uh, franchising owners across the United States, which is no small feat. How do
yeah.
you go from managing your own to being able to lead a team so big and to being able to meet those needs?
Yeah. Well, first of all, yeah, looking back on that, it's like, "Oh my gosh, how did that happen?" Right? My grandmother loaned me the money. Now, I had good work ethic, right? My grandmother loaned me the money to start my own business when I was in my young 20s, and she did that because she had seen my work ethic in whatever I did, whatever job I happened to have. And And again, applying what I've been talking about today to what I did as a distributor selling automotive tools for Matco Tools, over 5 years, I advanced faster in my business than most people. And what happens when you do well in sales, they want to put you in a
Leadership
management
position.
leadership position, and you can just teach everyone else on your team how to do that. And within the first 6 months, I realized that I didn't have any leadership skills. I could sell. I had that work ethic, but none of my guys would listen to me. They wouldn't do, they wouldn't do what I told them to do to be successful. And and that's when I had a discussion with Julie and said, "Hey, these guys are they're wacko. I'm going to quit. I'm going to go back doing what I was doing. They won't do what I'm telling them to do." I remember that discussion very distinctly in our kitchen, and she looked at me and said, "Yeah, you could always go back to doing what you're doing if you're not happy doing that." Or she said, "You could change your strategy."
Mm.
And I started looking for books on leadership, and that's when I found John Maxwell's book, Developing the Leader Within You. So you said, "Hey, you're a learner." I think what saved me then was that I was looking to learn, how can I become a better leader 6 months into getting that new role. And I heard John in that book say, "You could go back," but he goes, "You got to find a way to get them to do it because they want to do it, not because you're telling them to do it."
Mm.
And that struck such a chord with me. It was like, okay, how do I do that? How do I get people to do things that they might not see are important for them, but they want to do it, not
Yeah.
because I'm telling them to do it. So then it was like, okay, game on, new strategy. I'm going to figure out how to do this.
So you say something often, which is be all in, real, and bold. Which of those three has been the hardest for you to wrestle with in life?
Well, being all into everything I do is the easy part. It's like
Yeah.
once I'm committed to something, I get fully in or I'm not going to do it. Okay. Probably for me, it's that being real part. Okay. Now we know John Maxwell's written a book, Real Leadership, years ago. Relationships, equipping,
Equipping.
attitude, leadership. For me, the biggest challenge, and when I think about real leadership for me, first of all, is responsibility. That's been very easy for me
Mm.
because if I'm going to be all in, you got to be responsible. You've got to be committed. And then the next is excellent. And we could talk for a day about being excellent because most people in life are average. And we've heard John talk about average people.
Mm-hmm.
Most people are average. But for me, if I want to be a real leader today, I've got to be responsible and excellent. The third piece of this has been the hardest for me, being authentic. I think being authentic has been one of the biggest challenges for me because my early mentors were my father-in-law. He was a full-time speaker. One of his best friends was Zig Ziglar. He introduced me to Zig Ziglar when I was in my first leadership role and really got me focused on developing my speaking skills.
Mm.
So you want to think about, okay, I've worked on developing my speaking skills for years because I had mentors like my father-in-law, Zig Ziglar. I learned from Earl Nightingale, Norman Vincent Peale, all people that a lot of you that are listening into this probably have never heard about, but they were masters at speaking in public. So when I first started learning how to speak, I was more authoritative. I was modeling what I saw versus really being authentic to who I am for fear that, hold it, you can't be authentic. That's a sign of weakness. You can't show people your true colors. You can't talk about the things that you have really, struggled with in life and screwed up in areas of life. So for me, over time, being more authentic is still something that I'm working on today.
Mm.
I still get in front of audiences, and there's times where I don't connect. And I've had to stop and say, listen, I'm going to stop right here. I'm apologize. I'm going to apologize right here. I'm not connecting with you.
Mm.
So we're going to stop right here and I'm going to ask you a question and I want to hear from you. So for me, that authenticity side has been the biggest challenge I've faced
Mm.
because, again, responsibility is easy for me. It's a muscle memory. Being excellent now is like a new challenge with anything I'm going to do. How do I be excellent? It how do I be unforgettable in something? If I
Yeah.
think on that level, then that's like stretching in any environment.
It is interesting because a lot of people, I think a lot of people, when they think about authenticity, I think specifically with men, I think a lot of men, when they hear the word authenticity, they think weakness. And I would challenge most men that think that way because there is something about authenticity that makes you stronger. Not just stronger of like saying, hey, this is where I'm weak and this is where I'm great or this is where I've failed, but there is a level of authenticity where you do get real with yourself so that you can improve, so that you can get better. And I've said it
Yeah.
before, I truly believe that transparent lives transform lives, that if I'm transparent with you on what's going on in my life, it gives you an opportunity to say, you know what, this is what's going on in my life too. And having that ability to connect with people really does help. How has authenticity helped you to open doors? How is that muscle of working that, even though it might be maybe a scary thing at times of going, oh, this is maybe an area of weakness or where I fumbled the ball somewhere. How has that opened doors for you and helped you in your career to be more authentic?
Well, I think you're exactly right. Guys think, or men in general think, if I'm too authentic, it's a sign of weakness. Well, leadership is not what it used to be.
Yeah.
Leadership is so much different than it is today. They want leaders that are really real with who they are, authentic, and that show value in other people. So I think the thing that's opened most of the doors for me, there is a question that I ask most groups that I work with, and I'll start with that question from the beginning because I want to connect with them very quickly. And it's, if the world could describe you in one word, what would you hope that it would be?
Mm.
And when you ask people that question and give them a minute to think about it, generally they'll go pretty deep with you right away. And you'll find out something about them. In fact, if you ask that question in a group, you're going to find out probably something new about that group that you might not have known because you ask them, hey, if the world could describe you in one word, what would you hope that it would be? Not what you want it to be, but what would you hope that it would be? And then tell me why that's so important to you. And if you're listening to this, I would challenge you to think about what is the word that you would hope the world would describe you to be, and then how well are you living that out in your life today? If you did nothing more today than to start living out the word that you hope the world would describe you to be, you're going to become more of that every day. So that for me has that relationship, what that's done to connect quickly with people and build relationships. I can stop in and visit a client I haven't seen in 4 months just to say hi. And just because of that relationship and that depth of relationship, it doesn't matter how long we've been together or been apart. We feel like we've known each other forever. And as a result of that, they're like, hey, we were just thinking about you.
Mm.
We need to get you back in here. We need to get you back in here to speak to our group again. Or you know what? We've been channeling what we learned from you with our team.
Mm.
That's the kind of stuff that's helped open doors for me. The leadership lessons, the training and all of that, that's important. But the relationship that I've worked to build with them initially by asking them a few questions to get to know them has done more for me and the what I'm doing today than probably anything.
Mm. I want to ask you an odd question. That's a follow up to what you were just saying, and I went through this exercise a long time ago, and I'm curious what your answer will be. If you were to describe yourself as a color, what color would you be and why? How does that color represent you?
Well, in the world today, a chameleon is not a good word, right?
Yeah.
Because a chameleon changes colors. You know, you can look at my background today and probably see what my favorite color is if you were to think about that, right? Blue is a calming color. So if I was to answer your question directly, I'd say, hey, blue is probably my color. And I like blue because it's a calming color. But in reality, I can adapt to any color today. And I think that's part of it as leaders is it doesn't mean that you conform to everything. It just means that hold it, regardless of the color, I'm going to find a way to connect. Whether your color is blue or green or orange or bright red, you know, my wife's color's red. It's bold, it's big and bold. And there's times where I'm like, hey, let's just chill. My color's blue. Let's chill here, right? So for me today, I'd say in reality, yeah, blue's my favorite color, but being a chameleon and being able to connect well to any of those colors
Mm.
is my priority.
I love that so much. I love it because as I was thinking about it before I even asked you the question, I was like, I feel like the color for you is like blue because like you're kind of cool, like not like cool is like retro, like hey, you're
Yeah.
cool, man. But more of like you're cool, you're collected. You bring a refreshingness to conversation. You bring a refreshingness to interactions. And I think it's 100% the color that I would say that you are. In fact, as you were talking, I was like, well, blue is also a primary color, which I'm relearning right now with my kids. So, you have three primary colors, and blue is one of the primary colors. And when you mix blue and red together, you get a beautiful purple. And you
Yeah.
get a royalty color. And between you and your wife, like you can either be cold or you can be burning hot. But together, you get this beautiful, serene moment when you're able to balance the color out. So I don't know. It definitely was a random question, but it came to mind. I thought, how cool is that as you talk about the word that describes you? I think it's a really good challenge for all of us to think about that. What is the word that we want other people to remember us by? What is the word that would signify our life and who we are? And there's so many different ways that you can go about it, but I love that idea of the color. Now, what are the things speaking of like color and authenticity and being real, one of the things I love about your story, you've had so much success. You truly are a successful guy. Everything you've put your hands on, you've worked hard to make it successful.
Mhm.
And what I think a lot of people would be surprised by is the fact that you don't have a college degree. And I think it's amazing because I think some of the smartest people I know don't have college degrees because they're people that go out, they find information, they apply information, and they're continually growing because they know that information is the key in an application to becoming better. I'm curious, for me, I graduated from college, but even with me, I go, oh, I only have a bachelor's. I'm not really that smart. I don't have a doctorate. I'm not a doctor or fill in the blank.
Yeah.
Sometimes that can get in the way for people that they feel like I don't have the accolade. I don't have the right certification to do this or to do that. Obviously, if you're going to be a brain surgeon, we want you to go through school. But I'm curious, how do you or how have you been able to overcome a belief like that? Because with the amount of success that you have, I would imagine that you've gathered tools around along the way that have helped you in saying, you know what, the formal education thing isn't the most important thing. It's this other piece. What would you say to the person that wrestles with that identity piece of, well, I don't feel like I'm enough. I don't have enough to move
Yeah.
forward.
Nathan, I think that's such a good question. And I think from my perspective, and I'm not going to speak for everyone, I would think that there are a lot of people that don't push through and get some type of a degree. have questions about what the impact is going to be on my professional career,
Hmm.
positively or negatively. I think that's just a question that happens, and especially if you're getting hired, whether that's gonna be a derailer as you move ahead in life. Well, first of all, that's impacted me throughout my career as far as in my head, my mindset, and I'll just say most of it is mindset
Hmm.
because all of us can learn a skill, but working to stand out and get noticed, not to be show your ego, but to really put your effort in to stand out, to get noticed, to be above average. For me, what impacted it the most was when I got in those situations. As an example, I joined Maxwell Leadership to get access to more leadership development tools that I didn't have to bring in myself. And through that process, I realized that, oh my gosh, I am passionate about leadership, but I could do this outside of the company that I've been working at for 36 years.
Hmm.
And the question was, why would you want to do that when you've spent 36 years at this organization? You're at the top of your income potential. You're at everything, insurance, benefit, all that stuff. Why would you do something stupid and start a business from scratch and leave all of that behind? Well, that passion is what pushed me, and the fear of, can I do this? I don't have a degree. It was the people that I brought around me that helped me and encouraged me during that time. And I'm going to tell you, for me, it was having people around me that I could watch and see, oh, they did this. I wasn't even thinking about what degree they might have, where they came from, their pedigree, all of that. It was just I watched them, but I brought people around me that could encourage me, and I just took the steps and I applied what I've done in life, which was I'm going to find a way to be responsible, to be excellent at this. I can remember sitting down with John Griffin and saying, you know what, I don't know if I can do this, or I don't know if I'm ready. And I think that's one of the questions a lot of us have is, are we ready for this and can we do this?
Hmm.
But again, it's for me, it was taking the action. Because when we step forward and do things that are even so far outside of our comfort zone, we find a way to make things happen.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
for me, it was, and again, I don't know that there's any amount of education that could help me make a decision to take the next step. Now, logically, I might be able to rationalize that and say, you know what are the odds of this being successful, and calculate all the data and all that stuff. But in reality, it was taking action and following through.
Hmm.
So for me, again, I've had those thoughts. I still have those thoughts like, hey, where would I be today had I not done, had I done that? Well, I might not be right here. I certainly wouldn't be right here right now. But I've accomplished more than I could have ever imagined in life, primarily because of the choices and the actions that I took. And there's been failure along the way, you
You
know.
know, it's really funny because as I was listening to you, one of the things I just realized, I don't know why it's taking me so long to realize this, but we all make at least, well, the majority of us make one decision that we think that we know the outcome, but we don't really know the true outcome, which is when you get married. Um,
Yeah.
we all think of this is what it's going to be. It's going to be amazing. She's going to love me. He's going to be awesome. He's always going to smell that way. She's always going to smell that way. Right. Like there's a grand thought of what it's going to look like. And then you get into it. And then you have the choice of whether or not you work towards it to make it work, or you choose to give up. And life is like that, especially within business, especially with entrepreneurship. You have to be willing to step out into something to actually learn how to do it in many respects. 46 years, which Julie, don't kill me if you're ever listening to this. I'm just saying it for reference. But 46 years is a long time, especially in the world that we live in today, where very few people are committed for that long. I'm curious, how have you both, you and Julie, been able to create intentionally such a strong relationship that has gotten you to 46 years, 3 kids, 6 grandkids? What was some of the key elements in your relationship that you guys worked on to get you to that point?
Yeah. Well, again, another great question. For me, the word or the thought is that we made a conscious decision. Now, what that means is just like her dad on that day that called me and challenged me, I had to make a conscious decision that I was going to get in, be real, and be bold to move through whatever life's challenges threw at us. So, in the midst of 46 years and a lot of challenges, and I'm sure there will be more challenges to come, is we have made a conscious decision. That means that we don't let a problem get so large that it's going to be a deal breaker. And like in anything in life, communication is critical. We work together as well, which makes it even more of a challenge at times, but it also makes it more of gratifying at times when you work together and you're doing something together, especially if it's focused on a great cause. It it brings your bond together. But for us, it's a conscious decision every day
Mm,
that we are committed. Again, we are modeling. And I think for us, it's like, hold it, there's not a problem that's too tough that we can't get through,
mm,
even if we need help. And I think that's a big part of it is there's not a problem that we can't get through. And if we need help, we're okay getting help to get through that. Does that mean that we're always going to feel good? No. There's a lot of times we don't feel good, but we are committed
mm,
to push through. And that happens in a relationship. Those of you that are married know it's not about you. It's about us. And there's times where that's really hard. But I think for us, the reason we're together today is because we made a conscious decision early on that there was going to be nothing that we couldn't get through.
mm. I love it because making that conscious decision is truly important. That you're going to work things through no matter what. I think that's a thing that's lost in relationships today. Now, there are times where you have to be able to step back and go, maybe this isn't a good situation with where you are. There are those moments, but I will say that the majority of times that I meet people, they're not willing to do the hard work. And the hard work, a lot of times, from your perspective, from me, it's being able to die to self. Meaning, I'm going to take my pride and I'm going to walk out the room and I say, okay, so let's meet in the middle here and let's talk about things. You and your wife have done some amazing things. You both being the co-founders of Christian Youth Theater in Austin, helping really impact people through art. I'm curious, you have grown up around music. Music is a big thing. You're a great guitarist. And not only that, you have also invested in other people's musical careers. I'm curious, why is music such a passion for you, and how has that shaped the way that you see the world?
Oh my gosh. I started playing guitar when I was in high school when I had a buddy and I went to one of their shows they were playing at or a talent contest or something. It's like, oh my gosh, I got to do that. Right. So, okay, the background. I jumped in. The next thing you know, we're playing clubs all over Houston and then you get married. Okay. For me, it
It's a
was
little
like,
harder.
oh, I can't play clubs anymore. It was like, okay, well, if you're gonna be all into your relationship and in the right crowd, for me, it was like, okay, we're gonna play in the band at church. So that's kind of what happened for us. And music was a big part of our life. My wife was in theater in high school when I met her. So for us, music has always been a part of our life. And when we started having kids, it was like, okay, you're going to learn to play an instrument. Which one would you like to play? Let's just test and see what happens. So they all became musicians.
Hopefully no drummers.
And
No.
yeah, yeah, yeah. They all became musicians, and then the next thing you know, we're doing a Von Trapp family musical review for churches when we visited our parents, right? My wife had them all singing in church when they were like 2, 3, 4, and 5. So, kinda started that way, and my wife's always had a gift with kids, you see people that are like, "Oh my gosh, they're just naturally gifted to that." So yeah, we're passionate about music and the arts, and we visited our daughter-in-law that happened to be working for a theater in the Bay Area, and we just loved it. And we hadn't heard of CYT, and there's some CYTs across the U.S. Well, we started one in Austin. They didn't have one in Austin 10 years ago, so we work with kids 8 to 18 and really helping develop them as young leaders to be able to be bold, to stand in
Mm,
front of a crowd and speak and perform with confidence and authority. So it's been an incredible blessing to us to be able to steward that as well. But music has just been something for us that's always made a big impact in our life.
I love that. And I love the fact, by the way, if you guys are watching the podcast, you can see the guitars in the background. I would imagine those aren't like the books that you see in, people's, frames when you're watching the videos. Like he actually plays those.
Yeah,
Those
people
aren't
ask
just,
me all the time. They're like, "Hey, do you play those?" And it's like, I don't know about you. Have you ever been in someone's house and they've got guitars hanging on the wall, and you go like, if
it's
you're a
covering with
musician or
dust.
play it, and you run your finger across, and it's like, oh my gosh, I don't think that's been tuned in a few years. So it's like
Usually it's
that's
my,
kind of
my
like a
thought is, oh, that person hasn't loved that thing in a while.
exactly. So for me, it's like a pet peeve. Do I get to play them all the time? No. I play randomly today, but when you walk in my office, if you were to run your hands across any one of them, they're in tune. Okay. They're in tune. So that's like one of my things. It's like, hold it, if I'm gonna play my guitars, one way I do it is making sure they're all in tune. So it forces me to sit down and play my guitar for a
I
few
love that.
minutes. So
Well, I love that because the other funny thing about that is it reminds me. So when I was graduating from high school, was it high school? It was college. My grandmother passed away, and I ended up taking her inheritance that she gave me, and I ended up buying a really nice guitar. And to this day, I can still tune that guitar, and 8 months later, if I touch it, it's still in tune. So
yeah, that's a good guitar.
it's a
That's a
good
good
guitar when it
guitar.
stays in
Yeah,
tune. But
yeah.
I have really loved our time. There are a couple more questions that I want to see if we can try and get to because there are some really wonderful things about your story. If you've been listening right now and you say, "Man, I love what Tim is talking about. I really relate with him." Maybe you want to learn more about him. I want to encourage you to go learn more about Tim and what he's doing. You could visit his website, timnovak.com, or you can go to realleadershipdevelopment.com. Both two great places that you can connect with him. But not only that, he's got two amazing books. I want to focus on one of them really quickly, though, because it's coming out pretty much any day, which is Remarkable Influence. Remarkable Influence is going to be a spectacular book. And if you've listened to Tim for any amount of time on the podcast today, you know that he has a great amount of influence that he's built over his life. And I think that there are some really key pieces within the book that when it comes out, you're going to want to get it because it's going to help you to really be able to relate with other people, to influence other people, to be able to connect on a different level. Tim, I want to ask you first of all, what was the heart behind wanting to write this book? Because your first book was all about sales. This book is all about influence. Why was this book on your heart to bring it to the world?
Well, it's basically the story I've been telling you today. You know, it is my story, and it starts with that getting all in. The story of where I learned about real influence was after canceling a wedding I'd been planning for 8 months. So, I am super excited about this book because it it's my story. It's the things that have impacted me.
Mm,
It's what I've built some of my signature messages about when I go keynote or train organizations, and I've been testing this out for the last year. Not that we don't have stories that we use all the time, but specifically this content that I'm writing about here, I've been using this within organizations for almost a year now. So it's like I got to tell my story. I
Mm,
got to talk about what's it mean to get all in, be real, be bold.
mm. I love it. Make sure you grab a copy of Remarkable Influence. It's out there on Amazon. Um, the last question I want to ask you here, Tim. I like to focus in on this idea of being more over doing more. And I'm curious for you, when you hear about other people that they want to do more in their life, but they just don't feel like they're enough, what do you speak to them? What would be something that you could say to encourage them to take a step today into really stepping into who they were created to be? And I'm curious also, what does it mean to be more than before to you?
Yeah, well, that again, you've asked some great questions here today, and grateful to be able to talk about this one. You know, uh, my word, and I didn't ask you what your word is, and I'd like to get that from you before we leave. If and I'm sure something popped into your mind. My word's influential. And why that's so important to me, it's because I believe in every engagement that we have. And if you're listening in, it doesn't matter where you're headed today, whether it's morning or evening, you're listening to this. The first relationship, the first person that you're going to contact, the first person that you're going to talk to, you have the ability to kind of make that a wow moment or not a wow moment in the way that you initiate that conversation, in the way that you respond to that conversation. And if you are more intentional about that, you will be more, maybe in the way you greet someone. So if it's a phone call, hey, it's great to talk to you today. Oh, hey, if it's one-on-one, hey, it's great to see you today, rather than just, hey, how you doing? What's up? What's happening?
Mm,
You can make an impact on people. For me, influential means that in every engagement, live, virtual, phone, I'm going to work to not impress, but I want to validate the people that I'm with. I want to engage with them, and I want to set the tone for whatever that engagement's going to be. So I would just encourage you to be more intentional about your relationships, your conversations, the work that you're doing today. What would that look like for you? To be
mm.
a little more intentional about it and working at maybe raising the bar a little bit. So for me, influential is the word. And in any engagement, hopefully on this call, I have influenced someone to do something that might be a little different. Maybe it's a conversation they need to have that they haven't had. Maybe it's an action you need to take. Maybe it's a decision you need to make that you need to make a complete 180 and go the other direction, like me, hanging with the wrong crowd.
Mm.
So, Nathan, how about you? What's your word?
I love that you asked it. And you're right. When you were talking about the word, there was a word that came to mind. It was the word authentic. Authentic is a word that I absolutely love because even before we started our conversation this morning, recording it, one of the things that you said was, Nathan, you have this ability just to talk with people, and it's just a real conversation. And that's something that I always desire. It's always something that I want. It's really easy to walk into an environment, especially with, influential people, big names, where people want to come across as always professional with their guard up. Everything has to look pristine and good. And what I want people to have when they interact with me is an understanding that I truly love them, I care for them, but I care for the real story of who they are, the good things, the bad things, the challenging things. And at the end of my life, I want people to say, you know what? Nathan was an authentic guy. It didn't matter what was going on in my life. I could go to Nathan and I could tell him. And not only would he hear me, and would he encourage me, but he was there just to sit with me. And that's one of the things that I love about this exercise. The exercise of defining what is the one word that you want people to say about you. what is the one word that you want people to walk away feeling when they have an interaction with you? I want to encourage you that if you have listened today and there is a word that has popped off when either Tim or I have been talking that you say, man, I think that's my word. Challenge yourself. Is that a word that you're living into today? Tim, this has been such an incredible time. I know that so many people listening right now have they've gained influence, an understanding of how to influence people at a different level, but not only that, a greater understanding of who they were created to be, which is the entire goal of why I do the More Than Before podcast. It was such a pleasure getting to spend time with you. For all of you listening, if this episode added value to you, which I know it did, share this with a friend. Leave a review, subscribe, so that you never miss one of the transformational conversations like today. Until next time, remember to be more, see more, and experience more than before.